So I've been able to read book 3 of Frank Herbert's original novel Dune, and in particular the events that take place in The Prophet. As some of you already know, I'm reading Dune in the build-up for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation later this year, and as someone who is very excited for the film, my experience with reading Herbert's book has been fantastic thus far. In this video, I'm going to be focusing my thoughts on book 3, breaking down my initial reaction to reading Dune for the first time. This includes my analysis with brief spoilers from page 393 to 529. I have documented my thoughts on each book in this novel as there is so much to break down, so if you haven't seen my videos on book 1 and book 2, then I would recommend watching them before this analysis. Before I get into it though, if you want to see much more videos on Dune and the film leading up to its release date, along with the start of my Road to Dune 2020 series, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. Without further ado, let's dive into my reaction for book 3 of Dune. So during the 2 years between book 2 and book 3, we gather that Paul has established himself as a prophet and a powerful religious leader amongst the Fremen. His combat skills are now legendary as he has trained a squad of death commandos called the Fedaykin. They are the most loyal and deadly soldiers on Arrakis. Paul has also prepared and successfully become a worm rider. However, during some of his successes, some of the young Fremen men plan to push Paul into challenging Stilgar for leadership of the tribe after he rides the sandworm, and Paul himself has had visions of the jihad being connected to this confrontation. As they discuss the issue, they spot a smuggler ornithopter flying overhead, and Paul eventually decides to teach the smugglers a lesson not to invade Fremen territory. Alongside Paul being developed, we also continue our journey with Lady Jessica. His mother, now the new Reverend Mother, has also become concerned about Paul's role with the Fremen, and we see that Chani has given birth to a child, which is the product of her unofficial union with Paul. In the scenes here, we learn that his sister Aliyah has also caught the attention of the Fremen. Due to her unique experience in the womb, she is practically a Reverend Mother, just like Jessica. To me, she appears as one of the more disturbing creations in science fiction, being a 2-year-old who talks and thinks like an adult. Jessica accepts the young Aliyah almost as an equal, allowing her to attend and observe meetings of adults. But with the growth of Paul, his sister, Jessica, and the Fremen, we do start book 3 with a heavy focus on the opposition. Baron Harkonnen confronts Feyd Rautha and chides him for the foolish attempt on his life. He tells the teenager that one day, not too far in the future, he will step down and allow Feyd to succeed him. The Baron also tells Feyd that he will assign Hawat to watch over him, and Feyd realises that Hawat has been pitting them against each other. Feyd decides to wait for now and see what his uncle's plans are regarding the Emperor. But soon after, the Baron meets with Hawat. Hawat has asked the Baron to send a message to Rabban, the Baron's nephew on Arrakis, but he has not said why. Hawat reveals to the Baron his suspicion that the Empire uses the colony of Salusa Secundus as a training ground for the Sardaukar. Hawat explains that he believes that the Emperor ordered the destruction of the House of Atreides because Duke Leto's men had trained a small fighting force whose skills nearly match those of the Sardaukar. The Baron recalls that he once suggested to Count Fenring the possibility of using Arrakis as a prison planet, and Hawat suggests that the Baron abandon all aid to Rabban and force him to oppress the people even more, so as to make Arrakis into a new Salusa Secundus. One important theme in this opening section is the idea that oppressive conditions, whether intentionally enforced or not, breed superior humans, or more specifically, superior warriors. The intentionally oppressive conditions of Seleucia Secundus and the naturally difficult climate of Arrakis make life on both worlds a miserable experience, but ideal for breeding potent fighters. There is a significant difference between the two worlds. The Sardaukar are bred to fight on any world, whereas the Fremen know only how to fight on Arrakis. A Fremen would be beaten if he were to meet an opponent armed with a body shield. Thus, training and technological development must go hand in hand with the oppressive conditions that breed tough individuals. What we also learn is that a new dream is replacing the previous dream of turning Arrakis into an Eden. This is the dream of Paul being a saviour. Paul recognises that this threatens to sweep far beyond Arrakis and throw the universe into a bloody jihad. The other result of breeding such warriors is that they require some sort of glue, such as a cause to rally around or support, so that they do not give into despair. On Seleucia Secundus, the driving factor is wealth and power. On Arrakis, it is the hope of a world without strife. And after the rise of Paul, it is a dream of a universe of nothing but strife. Within this, the idea of replacement or recycling is brought up with a focus on preserving the ecology of the planet, as well as the history and beliefs of the people. This is shown through the importance of water to the Fremen and the role of the Reverend Mother living forever. Even names are recycled in Dune. Paul calls his son Leto after his dead father, Duke Leto. He seeks to preserve his father's name and history, just as the Fremen people seek to preserve their land and their hope of a better future. As we move on to the next section of Book 3, it is demonstrated that Paul is not only at the centre of the novel's dramatic action, but also that he completely controls the action. Paul welcomes back his old master Gurney Halleck, suggesting a role reversal, as if Paul is now the mentor and Halleck is the inexperienced youth. Additionally, Paul allows the Sardaukar to escape, which shows how confident he is in his own prowess and power. He feels that the Sardaukar enemies are so weak that he does not need to kill them right away. Rather, he can allow them to spread the word to the Emperor about his strengths and the force of the Fremen. The revelation that Paul is the Kwisatz Haderach further consolidates his potency and establishes him as a prophetic religious leader of not just the Fremen, but of the whole universe. During this rise, we also go further into the memories and visions of Paul and also Lady Jessica, beginning to see a greater difference between the way they are used. One way to understand Jessica's memories of previous Reverend Mothers is by using the theory of the collective unconscious or racial memory. It was suggested that all humans share very vague, broad memories from the earliest times of human evolution, when humans lived in the same area. This theory might account for why many different languages have very similar words for basic concepts, such as mother and father. It was thought that more specific memories might be passed genetically from one human to his or her offspring, and it's important to note that few theorists now support these ideas. Lady Jessica is much more aware of her memories than others due to the effects of the spice drug. Paul's ability to predict the future seems more plausible, though less realistic than Jessica's memories of Reverend Mothers. While it is unclear exactly how and why Paul is able to see the future whenever he consumes too much spice, it is conceivable that it's due to a heightened ability for calculation. Like a mentat, Paul simply calculates an amazing number of variables and decides which events have the highest probability. However, this theory does not account for things that Paul could not possibly know, such as Fade's name or that Aaliyah would come to be known as Saint Aaliyah of the Knife. In Jessica's and Paul's cases, it is probably easier to accept the idea that they have magical powers, something spiritually or supernaturally based rather than based in science. Paul's differentiation along gender lines of the forces speaks to the intricate balance between women and men in Dune. Each gender is like a force in the universe, and neither has total power over the other, since neither can face the other without losing something of itself. Each force, like each gender, cannot exist without the other opposing force. Paul, however, exists above this interplay of forces. As the Kwisatz Haderach, he is the only one who can balance the logical and the intuitive, and the male and the female forces. For example, Paul can use the voice to convince the Fremen to help fight the Sardaukar, but he must also win them over using logic. Paul's mastery of both the female and male forces means that he can become more powerful than any other human being. But in Paul's mind, come the final section of Dune, is the bloody jihad which he wants to stop. As Paul does not know how he intends to avert the jihad, we also do not know how he plans to bring peace and not war. Herbert offers only one allusion to Paul's future plans, when Paul says in his mind, "They sense that I must take the throne, but they cannot know I do it to prevent the jihad." As the new emperor and the most powerful person in the universe, Paul hopes to prevent the bloody deaths of millions. The idea of saving lives casts a new light on the quotations by Princess Irulan that we have read throughout the book. We do not know whether these quotations are in praise of a great religious leader who brought a time of peace, or in praise of a person who has brought war. Historically, the peaceful messianic figures are remembered better than the wrathful ones. However, we still do not know whether the Fremen will become soldiers of war or guardians of peace. When we reach the final pages following these built-up ideas, we are given a lot of fast-moving action that ends abruptly. The final battle and Paul's successes in regards to this singular book are anticlimactic. Without even an epilogue, it appears that Herbert intended a sequel to Dune, and there are of course 5 sequels. In the end of this opening novel, the minds of Paul, Jessica, and the Reverend Mother Mohaim are filled with weighty thoughts, but none of these are resolved or explored any further, as the characters just want Paul to be enthroned as the new emperor as quickly as possible. Paul's ascension to the emperorship and the Fremen's regaining of control complete the reversal of status that occurs during the course of the novel. At the beginning of the novel, the Emperor and the Harkonnen dominated the Atreides and the Fremen. Essentially, the power structure of Dune has changed since Paul was on Caladan. Duke Leto is dead, and now Paul is not only Duke of Arrakis, but also the new Emperor of the universe. The Fremen have regained control of their world and will soon turn it into the garden paradise that they have long desired. Once this change occurs, however, I leave the book wondering how the Fremen's culture will change and whether they will retire into easy lives of spice mining or follow their profits into space. But that was my reaction towards Book 3 of Frank Herbert's original novel. I really enjoyed this whole experience of reading Dune for the first time, and I can see why it has been such a beloved novel around the world over the last few decades. Dune is still widely read and considered a landmark of science fiction writing because it combines fantasy and sci-fi with important social issues about the environment, religion, human social interaction, and genetic development. Dune was ahead of its time in pointing out the importance of ecological preservation and conservation of resources. Also, by addressing religion's complexity, Dune explored a topic that was rarely addressed by science fiction prior to the novel's publication. Today, the issues that Dune addresses are perhaps more relevant than they were 40 years ago, and seeing Denis Villeneuve try and bring this to the world today is something that I think many of us should be excited about. But they were my thoughts, and I'm looking forward to reading more books on Dune after my coverage and build up to the first film that we will hopefully see later this year. Let me know down below how you feel towards Book 3 of Dune, and also feel free to comment some other interesting points about the novel that can help me and other readers. I'm intrigued to hear all of your thoughts. For more videos surrounding Dune 2020 and Frank Herbert's original novel, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating. I will be starting my Road to Dune 2020 series very soon, along with news and topics for the film whenever new information comes out, so look out for all of my upcoming videos. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.